On this Thursday night, the spectre of Trump re-enters the campaign. What he said again about Canada days before the election.
I have to be honest, as a state, it works great.
As new details emerge about what was said on Mark Carney's first phone call with the U.S. president. Tariff trouble, how American businesses are now feeling the squeeze of the trade war.
This little guy, he retails for $28 now.
Plus, what led to the police shooting of a man at the country's busiest airport. And Pope Francis's legacy, how he reshaped the Catholic Church and how that could determine who replaces him.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The American president, whose shadow looms large over Canada's federal election, has again inserted himself into the fray. Today, Donald Trump posted this while taking a swipe at China. He said, and by the way, fentanyl continues to pour into our country from China through Mexico and Canada. And in the Oval Office yesterday, when asked if he has a prediction about the election result in Canada, Trump declined to answer, but he did repeat some of his old lines.
We can make our own cars. We have more energy than they do. We don't need their lumber, obviously. We have more lumber. We have a lot of lumber. But in particular cars, they took a large percentage of the car making, and I want to bring it back to this country. I really don't want cars from Canada.
Trump hasn't said much during the campaign, but whenever he does, it reminds voters and political leaders of the threat the Trump administration poses to Canada. Liberal leader Mark Carney, in his role as Prime Minister, has had only one phone call with Trump. Today, he gave more clarity on what was said on that call. Mackenzie Gray reports.
Liberal leader Mark Carney has spent his entire campaign trying to convince Canadians to vote on who's best to deal with Donald Trump, something he's already done, calling the president on March 28th.
I have spoken to the current Prime Minister. He was very, very nice.
Trump liked the call, and at the time, so did Carney.
The president respected Canada's sovereignty today, both in his private and public comments.
But it turns out that wasn't true. Radio Canada first reported Thursday that Trump talked about Canada being the 51st state on that call with Carney.
We had discussions as sovereign nations. We agreed as sovereign nations.
Were you being truthful?
And after multiple questions, the Liberal leader admitted it happened.
I'll just give you one opportunity again. Yes or no, did Mr. Trump bring up the 51st state in his call with you?
I said that he did. I said that he did.
Comments that Carney brushed off.
Him raising something, and then where the discussion is. He has these things in his mind. This is not news. He raises it all the time.
The revelation was news for other party leaders.
Many people in Canada and in Quebec will say, what the hell is that?
Mr. Carney was not being straight up with Canadians. He was not being straight up, and now Canadians have a lot of questions.
While Carney's opponents attack his credibility on Trump, it nonetheless keeps the political conversation on the U.S. president, the person the Liberals want the election to be about.
For the purposes of the next 4 days of election campaigning, it's not unhelpful to the Liberals to have Mr. Trump back in the spotlight.
So that America...
Carney says Trump promised to negotiate a new security and economic framework soon with whoever wins the election.
It's not a photo op. It's not a visit to Mar-a-Lago. It's not any of those things.
Carney has promised he wouldn't start negotiations with Trump unless the Americans respect Canada. But how he plans to rectify that with the latest 51st state comment isn't clear. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Richmond, BC.
Global BC's Richard Zussman is one of the few journalists who the three major party leaders have agreed to do interviews with. He spoke with the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, yesterday, and among his questions was one about Carney's policy to build more homes.
People in this province are skeptical about politicians who say they can fix housing. Life is more expensive now than it was when your Liberal government took over. So how is your plan different?
No, just to be clear, let's be clear.
But
I've been Prime Minister for 1 month.
Yes.
I've been Prime Minister for 1 month.
But let's talk then about that. You're running with a team that's the same as Justin Trudeau's. You have some staff who are the same as Justin Trudeau's. So how are you going to be different when you run under that Liberal banner?
Well, the first thing, we are fundamentally different people. We share the same values, but we have a different approach to achieving those values. As I said a moment ago, I've got a laser focus on the economy. I've had long experience both in building things and managing crises and really having a results focus. You know, I look at I'm a pragmatist. How do we make things effective? So let's go back to housing. There's been a housing issue in this province, and then it's spread across the country. There's been a housing issue that's deepened and deepened over the course of the last decade.
Who builds it?
Great question.
We have an issue here. There aren't enough people to build it.
So there's many reasons why I want to talk to you, but one of the reasons is to get across a bigger message, which is we are going to build this country. We're going to build housing. We're going to build clean energy. We're going to build new infrastructure for reliable trading partners and beyond. We are going to need not just hundreds of thousands of jobs in the skilled trades, hundreds of thousands of careers in the skilled trades. So what are we doing alongside this is we're going to pay for people's apprenticeships. We're going to pay outright.
A few years down the road. No?
Hey, but you have to, if everything, Richard, is just in the moment, these are big problems. We've got to have structural fixes to those big problems while we deal with the biggest problem and biggest challenge we have, which is get my geography right, just across that border.
And it's the United States that has Carney honing in on a new message, speaking directly to NDP voters who may have never voted Liberal in the past, saying that it's time to consider his party because, as Carney describes it, he's a serious person ready for a serious time.
Okay, Richard Zussman in Victoria, thanks. The NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Winnipeg today working to hang on to some longtime NDP seats there. He took aim at Mark Carney's proposed spending cuts and promised the NDP would bring transparency to trade war negotiations with the U.S.
We know that Ottawa works best when one party doesn't have all the power. Ottawa works best when you send strong new Democrats like Leah Gazan and Leela Dance to fight for you and defend you and your family. Yeah.
Singh says he's confident his party's 3 MPs in Manitoba will be re-elected. The NDP is also campaigning tonight in Toronto. The federal Conservative leader is using the last few days of the campaign to visit traditional Tory strongholds. Pierre Poilievre was in Saskatchewan today trying to ensure Conservative ridings there stay blue. Touria Izri is in Saskatoon following the Tory leader. Touria.
Pierre Poilievre is the last major leader to visit Saskatchewan during the campaign, a traditional Tory stronghold where every seat went blue in the last 2 federal elections. Even in Canada's Conservative heartland, you can still find support for Mark Carney.
He is, of course, like the big one with Trump right now standing up to him, or it seems to be at least, so I trust him a bit more than Pierre Poilievre.
Except for one northern seat, polling shows it's a long shot for the Liberals in Saskatchewan.
I think Poilievre will go in. I really do. He's got some good ideas and getting the country all back together again, and I think he's the pick.
The Conservative leader headed to oil and gas country after making this announcement.
Conservatives will put you back in the driver's seat for a change.
Poilievre is pledging to end the Liberal government's mandate on EVs, saying it effectively imposes a tax on gas-powered vehicles.
This is Mark Carney's vision for Canada, a country where you don't get to choose what kind of car you drive, where prices on everything skyrocket to fund his radical ideology.
Poilievre's visit to Saskatchewan follows Carney and Singh, who came here earlier.
Poilievre has come here to sort of reassure his base.
University of Saskatchewan professor Ken Coates says if Poilievre can't beat Carney, there will be questions about his party's future.
Why would the people of Western Canada continue supporting a Conservative party? They're not going to go over to the Liberals because they can't stand what they've done to the West for a long period of time in very large numbers. But I think they're going to look at other alternatives.
Poilievre is holding a rally tonight in the city as part of his effort to ensure there are no cracks in the Conservatives' blue bedrock. Touria Izri, Global News, Saskatoon.
We'll have full coverage of the federal election on Monday. Decision Canada starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific on Global and on all our streaming platforms. In London, Ontario, this was supposed to be the second day of the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players, but proceedings were sidetracked by legal arguments, and then jurors were dismissed for the day. Jeff Semple is at the courthouse for us. Jeff.
Well, it's been an unusual chain of events here in court over the past couple of days, much of which is covered by a publication ban. That means we can't tell you everything that's happened here to protect the integrity of the jury and the trial. What we can tell you is that yesterday morning, the Crown gave its opening statement, outlining its case against the 5 defendants, members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team, who are accused of sexual assault. After the Crown wrapped up its opening argument, they called their first witness, a police detective. But that testimony was cut short yesterday afternoon. The jury was sent home early after an incident happened over the lunch break that the judge and lawyers had to discuss. That discussion continued here today. The jury was sent home again, but those jurors are expected to be back here tomorrow morning, at which point we expect to be able to report some of what's transpired here in court.
Okay, Jeff Semple in London, Ontario for now. Thanks. There was a deadly shooting at Canada's busiest airport this morning. A 30-year-old man was shot by police at Toronto's Pearson Airport. It happened just before 7 a.m., a busy time for travelers. Karen Lieberman is at the airport. Karen, what are police saying about that shooting?
Police say they'd been attempting to mediate a dispute at Terminal 1 when one of the individuals produced a firearm and pointed it at an officer. That's when the officers fired.
What began as a dispute and a call for a man in distress in the departures drop-off area ended with a 30-year-old shot dead by police.
I heard about 6 shots ring out, and it was pop, 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 pop. And then I heard somebody scream, and then I saw a sea of people running into Terminal 1. It was terrifying.
3 officers responded to the altercation involving people who were at the airport to travel.
The nature of the man's behavior could be considered possibly a little bit erratic, but I would say in mental distress. Maybe agitated, raising his voice a little bit, something like that.
When the man who'd been in the back seat of this gray Jeep Cherokee left the vehicle and produced a firearm, the chief says 2 of the officers fired. The province's police watchdog is now investigating.
Our officers spent an amount of time trying to resolve the dispute, an immense amount of de-escalation and engagement with the parties. However, abruptly, one of the individuals produced a firearm at our officers.
The man was with family members, and while he produced a firearm, he had not discharged it.
It's a tragic situation for everybody, especially if this was initiated as a mental health call for the police. They certainly don't want to see it accelerate to the level it ended up with. But, if that gun was produced by the other person, then they are justified in using that deadly force.
The man's weapon has been retrieved, along with body camera footage from one of the officers.
Police will also be speaking with witnesses. There were many here at the time. While air traffic wasn't impacted, the departures area was shut down for the investigation for hours. Back to you.
Okay, Karen Lieberman at Toronto Pearson Airport. Thank you. A commercial kitchen in Calgary has pleaded guilty to 4 charges after an E. coli outbreak at daycares in 2023 led to hundreds of children falling ill. Fueling Mines had been providing hot food to daycares when the outbreak happened. Nearly 450 people were infected. 39 children and 1 adult ended up severely ill in hospital. Today, as the trial was set to begin, the company's 2 directors pleaded guilty to 4 bylaw offenses. Other charges were dropped. The company was operating without a food services business license. More deadly strikes on Ukraine. Coming up, what Russia unleashed on Kyiv and what the U.S. president said about Vladimir Putin. In Ukraine, rescuers are working to reach people trapped under rubble after Russia pounded Kyiv with a barrage of missiles and drones overnight, destroying buildings and triggering fires. It's the biggest attack on Ukraine's capital this year. At least 12 people are dead. Many more are wounded. Ukraine's president, who arrived in South Africa as Russia started this assault, said he would cut his trip short and return home. And President Trump, well, he said he's not happy. He called on Vladimir Putin to stop and for both sides to agree to peace.
I wasn't happy with it, and we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired. We're putting a lot of pressure on Russia. and Russia knows that. It takes two to tango, and you have to have Ukraine want to make a deal too, and they're being hit very hard.
Trump was meeting with Norway's prime minister in the Oval Office at the time, and he refused to say whether the U.S. would consider placing more sanctions on Russia, but said, in his words, things would happen if the bombings don't end. Pakistan has banned flights from India and expelled some Indian diplomats after a deadly militant attack in the Indian-administered Kashmir region. Protests have erupted in Kashmir, India and Pakistan since 26 tourists were killed, most of them Indian nationals. India's prime minister has vowed to punish everyone involved, though there's been no confirmation of who is responsible. Yesterday, India announced suspending a water-sharing treaty with Pakistan. Pakistan says that would be an act of war. Feeling the pinch, Jackson Prosco talks tariffs with small business owners south of the border about how those tariffs are hurting them. As the American president holds firm on his punishing tariffs, some American industries are already feeling the effects. Their costs of supplies are rising, and there's a shortage of some foreign goods. Jackson Prosco went to Virginia to talk to business owners about how Trump's policies are raising their financial anxiety.
Founded as a trading port in the 1700s, Alexandria, Virginia is today at the center of a modern-day trade war.
It's got to be tough to plan around all this.
It's impossible. At Port City Brewing, owner Bill Butcher has had to pour out his business plans for the entire year, thanks to President Donald Trump's tariffs.
This is German malt.
Ingredients from Europe now face a 10% tariff, which could rise to 20%.
This is the Canadian Pilsner malt.
There's only a temporary pause on 25% tariffs on his grains from Canada.
They haven't raised our prices yet, but they have sent us a letter saying that, changes are likely coming.
And I imagine a lot of your suppliers are saying the same thing.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of good information.
Bottle caps and aluminum cans are subject to yet another series of tariffs. Prices have surged, leading to a shortage of glass bottles.
I don't think much thought has been put into the effects that these tariffs are going to have on small business at all. It just makes it impossible to plan our business when we don't know what the rules are going to be.
Come on in.
Alexandria's boutiques aren't faring any better.
Canadian brands are very important to us.
Amy Rutherford owns 3 small businesses, including a stationery store. Uncertainty is in the cards.
This greeting card says printed in Canada. Mm-hmm. Does that mean it was made in Canada? Does that mean it's tariffed or exempt, or how much of what?
That's a very good question. I mean, where is the paper made? I can tell you that sleeve that the card is in, not likely made in Canada, probably made in China.
Down the street at her toy store, prices are all but guaranteed to skyrocket.
About 80% of the toy market is made in China.
Imports from China are now tariffed at a whopping 145%. A cost too high for her business to absorb.
This little guy, he retails for $28 now. If we really did 145%, he could be up to $75.
Is anyone going to pay $75?
No.
Whole different ball game.
Back at the brewery, Bill Butcher is doing some tough math too.
$12.99 price point for a 6-pack of our beer could go as high as $17, $18.
He warns American manufacturers like him can't just cut themselves off from the rest of the world. Jobs and his business depend on trade.
What I would say to the White House is that there are ways to achieve your trade goals without punishing American small businesses and without punishing American consumers.
Jackson Prosco, Global News, Alexandria, Virginia.
Shaping the Vatican next, will the progressive ideas of Pope Francis carry through to his successor? Tens of thousands of mourners continue to pay their respects to Pope Francis, whose body is lying in state at St. Peter's Basilica. The basilica stayed open for most of the night to accommodate the crowds. Pope Francis died on Monday at 88. His funeral is on Saturday. And after a period of mourning, the process of selecting a new pope will begin. Cardinals are gathering at the Vatican for the funeral, and then they'll be the men taking part in the conclave, expected early next month. Redmond Shannon is at the Vatican and explores how the legacy of Pope Francis could shape the next pope.
Arriving from across the planet, cardinals are congregating. Some are old friends, but many have never met. As they retreat from reporters' questions, they face the task of honouring their Pope and then appointing his successor in next month's conclave.
Could the next Pope come from Africa, from Asia, or could we see a return to an Italian pontiff?
Beyond geography, there is also ideology, how the decision of cardinals will be shaped by the legacy of Francis.
He changed the centre of gravity of the Catholic Church. He taught us that the centre of power is not the Oval Office, it's not the Vatican, it's the outskirts, it's the people out there.
Sean Patrick Lovett worked under 5 popes in the Vatican's media arm.
It's not about conservative, it's not about liberal or progressive. It's about what does the church need at this moment in time.
Francis appointed 80% of the 135 cardinals who will soon choose a new pope, perhaps making a continuity candidate more likely, one who reaches out to those who were overlooked or even wronged by the church, such as Indigenous communities.
Pope Francis apologized when he went to Canada. That's not going to, there's not going to be a rollback. No Pope is going to go back and say, actually, by the way, we did everything right. Because mistakes were made, crimes were committed.
A century ago, the entire conclave was European. Now it's less than half, 40%.
If you end up seeing a cardinal from Africa or from Asia, where you do have a strong Indigenous presence still, that could be a possibility.
The Vatican announced Thursday that a group of people from Rome's poorer communities will line the steps of the Basilica of St. Mary Major on Saturday before Francis is laid to rest there. Another gesture to honour his legacy.
Okay, Redmond Shannon in Rome. Thanks, Redmond. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Gun Lake, BC, Audie Lake near Perth, Ontario, and a whole bunch of Canadian flags on an apartment building in Winnipeg. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Colleen Christie will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week when it's Election Day. Bye-bye.